So I this presentation, Lisa, to your point, it will not require a massive ton of brain power. I'm not going to go deep into big data. I am not going to go hugely into deep tactical stuff. I do have some tactical stuff at the end. I want to first try and story tell with data about the situation that we all find ourselves in, which is the combination of the global pandemic, obviously, but the economic distress that's coming from that, and how we've been seeing some smart marketers and smart marketing teams respond. So I put together, I grabbed just this week some of the latest data. This is a little bit US centric, but there's some global data in here as well. We are in a situation where obviously unemployment is incredibly high, at least in the States. I think it alternates in EU, UK, mostly around government situations and furloughing versus layoffs and those sorts of things. But in the United States, it is tremendously high. I'll tell you a brief story that broke my heart. So SparkToro, we had the worst launch timing ever. SparkToro is my new company. For those of you who might know me a couple of years ago from Moz, I left that company, started a new one, and we launched on April 22nd, 2020, which was pretty rough. The reality was we were planning on launching in March. We started doing our early access at the end of February. And you can kind of see from this graph, right? The February was still extremely low, historically low unemployment in the United States. We sent out those first emails at the end of February, and conversion rates were tremendously high. Like, we thought we had a smash hit on our hands. And then of course that started to collapse as marketing budgets and teams disappeared. And the worst part, I think the hardest part of the pandemic for me, honestly, was, I had about 20,000 people on this email list, and I'm sending emails to them, and I'm the reply to address, right? So when it doesn't come from team at SparkToro or anything like that, it comes from Rand at SparkToro. So we every successive week, we're sending out more and more of these email invites, and I'm getting something that I've never seen before, which is not just bounces, right? The bounce rate is increasing, but I'm also getting replies that are not out of office replies. My inbox is getting filled by, "This person no longer works here." So every weekday morning, I'm kind of like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," right? It's just decimating. And that is really, obviously emotionally tough for a ton of people, because every one of those people are going through personal and economic pain. And freezes and layoffs, like these are just the norm. This is from a company called Candor. They put together, at the very start of the pandemic, put together this excellent industry report. You can check it out and click through. But they aggregate data from now about 8,000 companies and show across the board. This is primarily tech. But show across the board where these layoffs are happening. And the only good news, right, is that I took a screenshot of this over time, several screenshots of this over time, and compared to late March, June is dramatically better, right? Most of these numbers are in the 40s and 50s, whereas they were in the 60s and 80s, meaning 60% or 80% freezes plus layoffs for a lot of these sectors. So that has dropped a little bit. But the reality is, for those of you who, I suspect a lot of folks on this call are in the UK and Europe, and so you have much more savviness. But we have to do work over here to convince Americans that the pandemic is real, and that people can infect you with it, and that it doesn't come from 5G cell phone towers that are connected to lizard people who run underground pizza dungeons. It's very challenging. We have a strange population here. But one of the things you can see is that, here's Minnesota and South Dakota, two states that took very different approaches to the pandemic. And Minnesota being one that took a very quarantine heavily regulated, lots of laws around not going out. And you can see that, by the way, for anyone who's wondering, this chart ends April 27th. So we're talking about Minnesota before the murder of George Floyd by the police, before the protests. And yeah, economic activity is not dramatically different whether you open up or not. This chart comes from the Congressional Budget Office. What's really interesting is this chart was just produced this last week, and it copies what UK economists have been predicting since February. Because, I don't know, if you have a fancy British accent, you're much better at economics. Maybe that's true, I'm not sure. Oh my God, yay. But the reality is we are likely going to see this sort of checkmark style recovery. And this is really important. If you're wondering, like, okay, Rand, I thought we were going to talk marketing. Why are you telling me about macroeconomics? This seems weird. It's because it's super important to you. I'll show you why in just a second. But it's super important to you as a marketer because of how you'll do budgeting and how you will do your pitches if you're a consultant or agency, and how you will pitch internally if you're in-house. So this checkmark recovery is exactly what UK and EU economists have predicted as well. And that is super important because of how we need to do our own predictions. I also really like this data from HubSpot. If you're B2B, this has mapped really perfectly for us. So for example, SparkToro, we were like, oh, things are super bad in terms of numbers. Our conversion rates were really, really bad, especially in March and April. And then we started to see a recovery, right? After launch, we were seeing and feeling this recovery. And then it got a little bit worse. What was that? Not this week, but last week and the week before. And sure enough, the HubSpot data matched up to that. And what's really nice, what's so nice, is to feel like, oh, it's not just me, right? Like if you're watching your data and you're seeing, gosh, traffic is here and clicks are here, conversions are here, it's really nice, right? To be able to look and see whether it's you or whether the broader ecosystem is this way. And HubSpot tracks this data every week. It's not just leads and closed deals. They also track email opens. They also track traffic. So you can go check out this portal that they've built, and they aggregate together all of HubSpot's customers into one place and anonymize it, obviously. All right, so what can we do? What I'm recommending is that you estimate demand in these three periods, right? There's the pre-crisis demand, so you can look at how your January and February went. There's near term, right? March until probably around December, where you can look at demand lost, growth, and during, and then longer term. And what you want to be careful is not to cut marketing by more than the demand that's been lost in your sector, obviously, right? And you don't want to cut so deep that you remove this potential. And the problem is that a ton of organizations are pulling back on marketing. Marketing is one of the first places that gets cut, right? Because people expect, oh, well, if demand's down, I shouldn't spend as much. My conversion rates are lower, spend is lower. And your organization is in one of these three buckets, right? Directly harmed, directly benefiting, or indirectly affected. So directly harmed, right? South by Southwest, Meetup, Expedia. Directly benefiting, people like Zoom, obviously. Whole Foods, Patreon. I don't know if you've seen the signups, but so many creators moving to Patreon, so many people putting money there. It's really cool to see. And then indirectly affected. For example, my company, my new company, is sort of indirectly affected. We don't do something that is directly harmed, but we're also not in that benefiting bucket directly. So we're affected mostly by the economic situation rather than the actuals of a pandemic and quarantine and moving to online work, et cetera. If you're in these buckets, you can think about, right? If you're directly harmed, you can think about changing who you serve. You could think about changing your product or service. There's a lot of folks doing this. Or you could think about changing your positioning, right? I had a great call, what was that? 3-4 weeks ago with April Dunford, whose book I can't recommend enough. It's called Obviously Awesome. And I think positioning, I want to write more about it because I believe positioning is one of the most underinvested in tactics and strategies in the marketing world. So let me, for those of you who are like positioning, tell me about that again. Positioning would be like pre-pandemic. Let's say you're an agency, right? Like Verve Search, right? A ton of what Verve positions themselves as pre-pandemic is likely going to be, we can help you grow your business, right? We can help you get more customers, more traffic, more links and press that will send you good traffic. Now it might shift to, we can help you save money, right? Because the positioning of we can help you save money is now more interesting to a lot of business owners. A lot of businesses and executive teams are going to resonate with that message more than they'll resonate with we can help you grow. If you're directly benefiting, you might think about new channels, right? Because you have more opportunity. There's probably more people that Zoom and Patreon and Whole Foods and a ton of other folks, Squadcast, right? You could think about growing your brand's reach or expanding your market targets. Like, hey, we've served these people in the past, but there's now these other people who need us. If you're indirectly affected, right, you could shift spend to higher ROI tactics. This is something that obviously Casey and I have had to do with SparkToro, or shift your targeting to customers who still have budget. So this is strange to say, but we have noticed, for example, Casey and I have noticed that SparkToro is doing better in the UK than it is in the US per capita right now. And that's just, yeah, that's meant that I get to have a lot of emails with a lot of folks on not my time zone, which is delightful, but very cool. So there's this weird reality. You all have seen this, right? That there's more ad inventory because for two reasons, right? More ad inventory because tons of people pulled back on their spending, and also because so many of us are spending so much more time online. So there's just tons more like Facebook impressions that you can get, Instagram impressions that you can get, Google impressions that you can get, depending on what we're talking about. And it's cheaper than ever before because people have pulled back on the spend. And so I was talking to a friend here in Seattle for the backyard social distancing drinks, right? The only way you can get together. And he was telling me that this is wild. So he's not really in digital marketing world, but he does flight school training, remote flight school training, right? So if you want to get your pilot's license, fly a small plane, like he and his buddy will essentially do those remote lessons virtually over Zoom or whatnot, and you can start to accrue the hours. Cool business, right? And they just started it in January, and he was like, in January, a conversion, right? Getting a conversion from Facebook or Instagram ads was $3.30, which he's like, it's not, not bad for us. And now it is 22 cents. 22 cents. He was just like over the moon thrilled. He's like, yeah, we can't run ads very much. Like we can only run them a little bit because we don't have much bandwidth. But he's like, it's dirt cheap. It's kind of great. And of course, like we said, more online attention than ever. Budgets are down, but we saw that checkmark recovery. And I think actually we are starting to see the beginning of that checkmark style recovery, which means some of the demand is going to recover in most sectors. Probably like 50 to 60% of it will recover relatively quickly. And if your business is not there for it, you will probably lose out on a lot of that to competition, right? Because as demand returns, there's a lot of pent up future demand, right? Dollars, I don't know about any of you, right? But most of the people I talk to tell me that personally, their own personal spending, like they look at their checkbook, their credit card statements, they're like, man, I am saving a lot of money. Like I have not been spending like I usually spend. This is kind of weird. And so like one of the things that Geraldine and I did, we've been trying to make up for that by just donating a bunch of money. So every day is like a ton of that stuff. But some sectors, products, services, they're more wanted and needed than ever. So this is a strange reality that we're in, very different than literally any time I can remember economically in my lifetime, certainly in my adult lifetime. So most organizations are going to be scared, and they're going to try and save money instead of growing their business. I think smart organizations are going to see opportunity here, and they're going to try and invest in profitable growth, right? They're just going to repurpose their budget to look for where are places where I can still grow profitably rather than cutting deeply. But most organizations are pulling back more than demand is pulling back, which is why you see this sort of scary cycle. At least in the United States, we've seen a scary cycle of deflation for 3 or 4 months in a row. Deflation, we haven't seen deflation since the 1970s. It's crazy, meaning the consumer price index, right? Stuff is cheaper than it was a year ago. Not a ton, but I think it's like 8%, 7%, something like that. It's weird. We just bought Geraldine's mom a television. Lisa, she burned down her house. Did we tell you about that? Yeah, anyway, blah, blah, blah. And like TV prices are down significantly. My little brother was helping us out and he's like, oh, look at that, all the TV prices are down. There is still opportunity in a ton of fields. One of the fields that I see a bunch of opportunity happening in is sort of small businesses moving online and people who've been let go from their companies starting up something, right? So Gumroad, Patreon, these are businesses that help small creators, artistic creators get online, and businesses like Shopify, where they're helping small businesses and local, especially small businesses, get their online presence. There are also sectors that are seeing more growth, right? So this was wild. So Disney Plus was estimating that in 2024, they would have somewhere between 50 to 90 million subscribers. They had 50 million subscribers in March. In April. Holy crap. I watched The Mandalorian. I thought it was like, okay. I didn't think it was 50 million subscribers. Great. Ivano Di Biasi in Italy was noticing that, so I don't know how many of you have Italian relatives. My family on my wife's side is all Italian, and they do not visit cooking sites. They do not look at recipes, right? Like it's sort of, I don't know what to call it. Not forbidden in Italy. Like it's not legally forbidden. It's just, not culturally widely accepted to look at recipes. You're supposed to use, family recipes, but recipe website traffic has been going crazy since the pandemic. And if you're in e-commerce, this excellent piece from Stackline, they put together 100 of the categories that have the most growth. So this is double and triple digit growth categories in e-commerce, everything from dog food to flour. Have you been having this problem in the UK where you can't get flour in the stores? Yeah. People are baking so much. It's incredible. I almost had 2 visible abs before quarantine, and now it's just like, oh man, stupid cake. And there is a lot of pent-up future demand. Jason Furman, who's an economist here in the United States, but he does cover global economic issues, and I highly recommend following him. I've personally learned a ton from this guy. But he was noting that this excellent piece from Business Insider, where they covered the fact that, who was it? I think it was Cruise Compete. So they were looking at cruise offerings, right? So people who already had cruise bookings, and the cruise lines were offering people the option of, right? Like, hey, Mark, hey, Lisa, here's your cruise for this year where it's getting canceled. Would you like a refund, or would you like a credit towards a future cruise? And 76% of people took the future cruise. Now you might think, oh, well, mostly rich people take cruises. No. In the United States, especially in the South of the United States, it is very popular to take cruises among folks who, like, it's not a ton of very wealthy folks. It is often middle income, even lower middle income. This is a vacation of choice for a lot of those folks. So this is people saying, like, I am willing to sacrifice the refund. I would like to go on this in the future. That's right. That suggests that there will be that future demand. This is an awesome time to experiment. And that is because people's, I don't know what it is about executive teams and CEOs in particular, but when there is a crisis, suddenly all those ideas that you had that it was like, no, there's no time for that, suddenly those are back on the table. So that can be in product, right, where we launch new things to serve new needs. It can be in pricing, right, offering low-cost packages or a prepaid discount. Could be in positioning, highlighting your product or your service as a solution to this newly relevant kind of problem. Or it could be in tactics, right? Changing my channels, changing what I'm trying to accomplish with my marketing. I'm going to talk a little bit about shifting from trying to get conversions to trying to get emails, right? So I'll show you some examples of these. This is Glowforge here in Seattle. They basically they didn't launch a new product. Their product is it's giant. It's like this huge 3D laser cutter. And you can make all sorts of things, lots of crafters and folks who like sell things on Etsy and make things for craft fairs love this device. But when the pandemic hit, they basically said, hey, how can we help? And they saw, I don't know if you've seen this on healthcare workers, right? But like the back of your ear after wearing the mask gets pretty raw after a full day. And so they made these ear saver things, right? That helps the mask fit better and that is adjustable. And you can make them at home on your Glowforge. And then they sent it out to all of their customers, people who had Glowforges at home, and said, right, there's these two messages. I need ear savers. So if you're in the healthcare world or your front lines of the COVID crisis, they will get them to you for free. And if you have a Glowforge, here's how you can help by printing more than 1,000 ear savers a day, right? So it's like new product helps their customers feel great about contributing positively to this problem. WhiteSpark did this very wisely with pricing and positioning. So when WhiteSpark launched their sort of new version of their service, right, that helps local small businesses get listed in all these places, instead of calling it, whatever, the WhiteSpark package, they called it Yext replacement service, and they positioned it as one-time fee rather than recurring, low cost, right? We know that you small business owners don't have the money for this all the time. Very much a pricing-based product launch, and my understanding, quite successful. I don't know if you've seen this one, but as far as weird marketing tactics experiments go, this is possibly the weirdest I've ever seen. So if you've seen any analysis of the United States presidential election, which I know surprisingly many folks in UK and Europe follow, kind of like a bad sports game. I don't know, I guess, which politics in America is very much team sports. So no, there you go. But the Biden campaign has been the quietest, least public campaign to this point in the election of any campaign in modern American history. They basically were like, hey, the more Joe Biden stays at home, the more people like him. So let's just have him be quiet. And his lead in the polls is now in double digits. He's running even in places like Texas. Granted, I don't think he's going to win in Texas, but running even in the polls in June before the election for a Democrat, Texas, that has not happened since the 1970s, maybe even the 60s. I mean, just wild. So very, very, very strange, but it's a positioning experiment that is basically, let's turn Biden into a generic Democrat. And you might be thinking, okay, how do I apply this to my campaign? Well, think about how people perceive your product and your brand, and how you can do interesting positioning experiments around that, because now is a time to consider that. I'm not suggesting that you go silent on your marketing, right, unless you're running against something very unpopular. But Ben & Jerry's, you've seen this from a ton of brands now, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement and protests. I don't know if you're aware, but here in Seattle, we have a neighborhood. It's actually my old neighborhood. So I think Lisa and Mark, you were over at our old apartment, Geraldine and I's old apartment. That is now in the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which is essentially like a non-policed neighborhood. Like they took over the precinct, the protesters took over the precinct, and it's like right-wing media is trying to paint it as lawless anarchy. It's mostly people watching documentary films on their lawns and yeah, handing out free beverages. It's quite sweet. But these experiments around racial justice apparently have worked extraordinarily well for Ben and Jerry's, and you can go check them out. They have done statements not just on this stuff, they've done statements on environment stuff. They did statements around Black Lives Matter and police brutality most recently. Very socially conscious driven organization, and been very successful with that marketing. So before you kill your marketing budget or cut your team, I am urging you to consider opportunities to change with the times in these 4 sectors, right? And when you do so, I think one of the ways that you can get budget for that is to audit your paid spend. I don't know if you've checked out this Saving Benjamin's tool from Seer Interactive, but they do a really nice job with this of basically showing you, PPC budget. You connect your Google Ads account, and they will show you where you might be bidding on keywords that are costing you money, and when they're costing you money but not sending you conversions, right? Or they're showing on places where people are not going to click on your ad, not going to buy your product. That's hurting your quality score as well, which means it hurts all your other ads, right? Because of how these algorithms work. I also would urge you to audit your message and funnel. I don't know if you've seen messages like this. Look, I am literally in Reddit's coronavirus subreddit, and the ad says, you've got places to go, people to see. No, I don't. I have nowhere to go. The only places I go are my house, and then I put on my mask and grab a sign and protest, but otherwise I am at home. Vonage, right? This is a creepy ad. It's creepy even not right now, but it's especially creepy right now because coworkers should definitely not be doing these things ever, but also, yeah, during a pandemic. My old company, Moz, I love them. They did launch a very cool new SEO report template, but is this going to be the easiest reporting season you've ever seen? I don't think so. I would not put that message. That is not how I would position or frame things. And to be fair, they probably put this ad up in February or whenever they launched it. Still, audit your messaging, audit your funnel. You can find opportunities where you're probably not doing things as well as you should. All right, let's talk a little strategic thinking. I am urging folks, and we're doing this as well, right? To find that audience that can and will still pay for what you provide. So if demand is down, right? If you're directly affected, or you're just affected by the economic situation, you might think about looking for businesses or consumers who fit these profiles, right? Demographics or psychographics or behavioral, right? Behavioral would be like, what words do they search for? How do they use the product? Psychographics, things like lifestyle and values. Demographics, you're very familiar with. And there's a few ways to get at this. In particular, right, we can use surveys to ask who's affected and how much, who's hit harder and softer and how, when are they ready to buy, what are they switching, how are they solving the problem, right? And then I really urge you, anytime you're doing surveys, large-scale surveys, get the color and depth for your team by doing a few interviews with some of those people, like one-to-one talk to them. I get really biased by either surveys or interviews, but when I combine them, I find I get great data. We did this we keep doing this for SparkToro, and it's very, very helpful. For usage data, right, you want to look at which referral sources are still performing. I'm going to show you an example of that. What content performs now performs better versus worse, which features result in repeat purchases. And with attention going online more and more, right, we want to kind of use this process where we say, okay, what is my audience paying attention to now that we're all stuck at home and we're all using the web way more? What are the messages? What's the positioning that's resonating, right, that's converting people? How do I market in those places with those messages? And then I want to experiment, right? I want to try new things. You can cut that ad spend and paid marketing. I think those are where opportunities lie to invest in future demand, right? So invest in collecting email addresses, invest in collecting wait lists, invest in building relationships, building branding. That's a good way to play this thing. And to do that, right, you've got this audience for your work, your messaging, your content. If you're doing content marketing, your PR, right? That's kind of these groups of like current customers, potential amplifiers, and then this broader community. I wrote a detailed blog post about this, so I won't go deep on all this stuff, but that audience is not just your customers and potential customers. I'm trying to figure out a good visualization for this, but like current customers are a subset of potential customers, but there's also people who amplify your work, right? This is like press and media, this is bloggers, this is folks on social, right? And they are not necessarily potential customers. And then there's this broader industry and community around whatever it is that you do, who also, some of them are potential customers, some of them are amplifiers, not all of them. And like these groups of people, right? These external sources of influence, the industry pubs, your customer evangelists, your potential evangelists, these are different groups than we're used to, than a lot of people, unfortunately, are used to marketing to and trying to reach. Now is an awesome time to reach potential amplifiers, to build relationships there. I kind of hate the term influencer marketing. Like 7 years ago, influencer marketing meant go build relationships with all the sources of influence. And now it means go find half-naked people on Instagram and pay them $500 to pose with your product. That's weird to me. I get that it works in some sectors. I think right now it's not as effective, right? But I do think reaching out to amplifiers right now is an awesome opportunity. And the most successful content, whatever it is that you're producing, the most successful messaging tries to appeal to this intersection: potential amplifiers and potential customers, right? If you get that intersect, you are going to reach a much bigger group who potentially can convert into current customers. So you want to have these questions answered, right? Things like, what makes our brand resonate with current customers, right? When it comes to potential customers, how can we earn their business? What's their perception of us? With amplifiers and media, right? We're asking questions like, which of these publications have influence, and how do we stand out? How can we earn their attention? Before we wrap up here and do some Q&A, let's talk a few tactics. I always like to end with like a few little, hey, here's one thing you can do. All right. Right now, podcast advertising is dirt cheap, and there are a ton of people who are listening to and trying new podcasts. Podcast listenership, interestingly enough, is down a little bit. I think it's down 10 or 15% in the United States, but the distribution of podcast listenership has gone very broad. So there's like more people listening to more new podcasts, but because people aren't commuting as much, listenership overall is down. Advertising rates on podcasts have dropped dramatically. Most podcasts don't even have advertisers or sponsors. If you are wondering, how can I get someone that people trust to say nice things about me in front of the right audience, podcasts are freaking awesome for this. Freaking awesome. And so this is the SparkToro product, but a bunch of our customers, SparkToro's customers, use it not exclusively for, but just for finding podcasts to reach their audience, to go do messaging. By the way, if advertising is not your game on podcasts, you can pitch for guest spots. A lot of podcasters are looking for guests. If you can tie something that you're talking about or doing or launching to what they are talking about, it's pretty sweet. I've done a ton of podcasts recently, and this sends significant traffic to SparkToro. Type in, direct, all that. Okay, second one, go look through your analytics. So this is, see what I'm in here? I'm in my Google Analytics. I went to acquisition, all traffic, referrals. I'm looking at the referrals, and we have a goal in our GA, which is essentially, did you create a free account on SparkToro? And look at that, Buffer, who wrote a blog post about social media tools, when they send us traffic, it is golden, golden. So, what could I do with that? Well, I could go over and look at what are other people who frequently visit Buffer sharing, linking to, amplifying, visiting. So I'm showing SparkToro here, but SparkToro is not the only way to get this data. You can go to SimilarWeb and get some of this for free as well, right? Both these tools have free versions. You can go to LinkedIn pages and look at related LinkedIn accounts. You can go to their Twitter account and look at related Twitter accounts. So there's lots of opportunity there. Number 3, I talked about this sort of idea of building pent-up demand right now. Offering free value in exchange for an email address is a pretty awesome way to go right now, because there's a lot of people who have interest in products and services, want to get things for free, don't have the budget today, might have the budget in the future. Capturing that email address, awesome opportunity for the future. Luke Carthy, I know you're thinking, wait a minute, 12:43 a.m., June 12th, 2020. That was very recent, Rand. Yes, you're correct. I grabbed this screenshot 5 minutes before delivering this presentation. And right, he's talking about setting up this e-commerce landing page, if you're in e-com, to leverage all the PlayStation 5 related queries that are going to be coming out. And you can't sell them anything, but you can collect an email address, right? And this works really well. One of the things I'm so frustrated by, I'm sure you've seen it, right? Like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of their click-through rates are dropping off a cliff, right? So like you post a message on Instagram and 4 years ago, it got like, whatever, 10% of people might click through to your bio, or sorry, it would be like 3% of people, right? You post a message on Facebook and 2% click through. Now, Facebook's click-through rate is 0.09% on average, right? So just garbage. It's a great time to test pulling back branded search. If you are looking for money, like where can I save money? A lot of advertisers who were advertising on your branded stuff have pulled back, which means you can too, right? Squadcast might not have any competition. They might be in the #1 organic spot. They might lose less than 5% of all the clicks that they're getting by pulling this ad, and they might save themselves a ton of money. If there's ever been a time to pull back on branded search, it is right now, because people are not advertising against your brand as aggressively as they were. Number 5, maybe my favorite bit of advice. If you're feeling super overwhelmed, right? Like if you look at the news and just think, I can't do it. Like I cannot do another day. Just getting out of bed, just doing any of this stuff is so hard. And I have had days like that. Oh my God, if I had days like that. Science says the best way that we can help ourselves is to help other people. And so my advice to you is go to your networks, reach out to folks, email. I've been sending a lot of Twitter DMs. I've been sending a lot of LinkedIn messages that are just like, hey, I saw your post. I am also feeling that way. Do you want to chat? Is there anything I can do for you? It works. It's not just awesome for business, it's awesome for humanity. It's a really nice time to do that. Okay, thank you so much for having me, and hopefully next year we get to do this in person.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rand. I'm sure we have some questions as well. That was really great. It's really actually really great to hear some overall background about how the time that we're in, because every time things get difficult and you see things as a disadvantage, there's also advantages of that disadvantage, and making you think more. And I think in terms of creativity and in outreach and campaigns, the difficult times is where we sharpen our brains the most. So yeah. I've actually found that I've thought more things now than before, but that might also be my personality. I'm like, hey, we're in the crisis, let's go.
I know. Panic brings out the worst and best of us, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's really interesting. Lou, have you got questions from the audience?
Yeah. So yeah, guys, feel free to send over any more questions. What do you think is the best approach for companies that are about to launch and don't have much or any historical data? Should they go slow and experiment?
Yeah, so my strong recommendation, I gave a presentation a couple weeks ago to some startups on, sort of how we chose to do things with SparkToro. If you are pre-launch, one of the things I strongly urge you to do is do a private beta, right? So invite some people who are in the world of customers to test it out. It can be people in your network. It should be some people who are outside your personal network or professional network as well, so that you get some test results. Your friends will tell you they love your stuff, right? Of course. But I really, really like that prior to launch, and I like that because that process doesn't just help you refine your product. It also builds future demand. So one of the things we saw with SparkToro is when we said, hey, come be a beta tester, tons of people joined our email list, right, to sign up for the thing that we were going to do. And then we got to market to those people later on. That was like how we did our early access ramp up. So that is kind of my advice there. And you can get a really good sense for how your product will perform by looking at, are people coming back to it? Are they recommending it to people? Are they really excited about it? What's the level of excitement? So that helped us feel a lot more confident about eventually doing our launch.
Okay, another question is, you are incredible at kind of personal connection on social, including personal messaging and commenting, but it must keep you so busy. How on earth do you manage the time on social media, even when you're a founder of a successful company?
Okay, wow. First off, that is incredibly kind, and yeah, it kind of makes my day that somebody feels that way. That's really lovely. So
Yeah.
two things are true. First off, I don't have children.
Oh.
So that is like one cheat code, right? I just want people to be aware that, right, the only person I have to engage with, right, is Geraldine. Like, we're the only two people in the house. So the second thing though is I definitely make it part of my kind of what I would call process. Like I think of social media similar to the way I think about my email, right? It's something to be gone through regularly. I both learn from it and get value from it and am educated. But yeah, I really like doing those personal messages. I think that even though it's non-scalable, it does work really well. One other thing that I do that's not scalable that works really well is a ton of personal emails from me, right? So I personally email all of our customers who sign up at SparkToro. I visit all their websites. I, look at what they're doing with the product, and I send them a very personalized message. And I always get the reply. It's delightful. I always get the reply. I was trying to figure out how this could be an automated message, but it can't. Like, you really sent this, didn't you? And then sometimes people will take that email and post it on LinkedIn or something, right? And be like, look at this email that Rand Fishkin sent it. So early in a company, that advice, one of the few pieces of Silicon Valley standard advice that I actually really like is do things that don't scale. I think you can do personal things that don't scale.
Yeah. I remember I have an example of this from a company I bought some CBD oil from. And there was some screw up with the delivery, and the founder, so they obviously just like 3-4 people in this company, and the founder was at a stand, like a conference thing not nearby, but like 20 minutes away, and decided to drop it off at my house. And it made such a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like the personal kind of attention, and luckily for him also having actually some followers and stuff. And I talked about that, and that made a huge difference to the brand following and how Yeah, but
Lisa, you're gonna be so delighted by this. I had a conversation with my 94-year-old grandmother who's having a lot of pain right now, and I think I convinced her to try legal marijuana.
did you? Oh my
Yeah,
God.
right, because Washington legalized it, and I was like, no. Of course, her first question to me was, "Wait, where do you get it?" I was like, no, Amma, you don't, it's not a drug dealer. There's stores. There's a store right up the street from me. I just walk in, I buy it, I bring it to you.
Oh my God, I've been on a New York a New York play with her. I can't imagine her.
Yes. Yeah, we went, that's right. We all went to a play together. She's still kicking. She's 94. It's
Oh my God,
incredible.
that's awesome. That's so funny.
I just want to do a bit of fangirling right now, Rand. I've got to say, I love all your stuff on social media and the range of stuff that you cover. Like, I find it so informative. So yeah, keep doing that.
Thank you. I have lost the most followers I've ever lost in the last 3 weeks, which I must say I'm relatively proud of. I don't know if I should, but I'm somewhat proud of.
No, that's good. That's good. It means that they weren't worthy to follow you. Okay.
Well, and just, the way I think about it is like, that's not really who I want to be helping anyway, right?
No.
So like going forward, I'm very happy to be able to help people who, look, you don't have to be all the way there, right? In terms of a lot of this political and social stuff, right? But if you're not on the journey, if you're not on the path to understanding the Black Lives Matter movement and police brutality, and like, I don't really want to, I'm not going to start that journey for you. You got to get started, and then I'm happy to, walk along some of that path with you.
I think this is very relevant. I think that one of the most important things doing marketing and any kind of business is that people don't dislike you for having personal opinions. And in fact, that makes your company more human. So, a lot of companies say that, oh, you shouldn't say this or that on your Twitter profile or whatever while you work for the company. You have to say it's your opinion. But actually having an opinion and being willing to stand up for your opinion actually makes you more human, and it actually does more for you. And that's one of the biggest challenges that companies have got in brand and marketing in general, is that people don't feel anything for them. And the feeling something is the currency of any marketing.
Right. People are not buying what you do, right? They're buying why you do it. I think the United States is obviously in a very, very unique position right now. I've never seen anything like this in my lifetime. I've seen things like this, but never with this magnitude. And I think you can sort of see and feel what is happening from looking at a lot of brands, right? You can look at the NFL apologizing for the way they treated players. You can look at NASCAR banning the Confederate flag, which, if you've ever seen NASCAR races, it is filled with that symbology, right? Filled with racism and callbacks to the Civil War and calls for a new one, and like all that kind of stuff is very present in their brand. And them pulling back on that is definitely going to hurt their business. And then you can see companies like Starbucks saying like, no, our employees, our team members, like, are not allowed to wear any Black Lives Matter stuff. We will not tolerate that, even though they were okay with, folks doing the legalized marriage and GLBTQIA plus stuff. So, right, you're sort of feeling where brands are right now. And I think it's a really challenging position. I've been on a ton of email lists with a ton of entrepreneurs, business owners, consumer brand CEOs, talking about how challenging this time is for them, because they hear the messages like silence is violence. They see people on social in their email calling them out for not having a message up yet. And they're, I think many of them are torn about what is the right thing to do. And, to my mind, the right thing to do is obvious, but it is not obvious to everyone. And I do have empathy for those folks.
Yeah.
We have a couple more questions. So Bretto would like to know, do you have a new book in your head right now?
Fair enough.
Behind you.
Yes-ish, right. Yeah, I've got lost in the old Lost in Thunder. Yes-ish, but it probably won't be started until I know what the SparkToro journey looks like, right? So look, I mentioned that we launched during the pandemic, and we're sort of, we are growing. We're hopefully on a path to getting to profitability by the end of the year, which is exciting. Like in the midst of a pandemic and an economic downturn, that's exciting. But it is, oh my God, it's a slog building a business. Such a slog. I think I forgot how hard those early days are, right? Like if there's a day where we get 0 new customer signups or 1 new customer sign up, like my mood is really different than it is if we get 2 or 3 or 4. it's just how it is, right? Yeah, early days again.
Cool.
So I will write about that at some point for sure.
Awesome. And the last question we've got is, what do you think is the correlation between podcasts and conversions? This is the golden question when developing this activity, and how can we actually measure it?
Okay, wait, I'm going to show you one thing in my, because this is a great question. How do I show my Firefox? Yes, okay. So go to, all right, trends.google.com. Okay, so podcast measurement is really hard. I 100% agree with you. It's tough. I'm not sure if I can do it with, here, wait a minute. Let me do CrowdCow. I think they will show, yeah, they've got pretty good. Okay, so you can, let's say you go on a podcast on June 9th in the middle of the day, or end of the day. Do you see that? You see how you can track hour by hour brand search volume? That is one of the best ways I have found. If you're on a podcast that has at least a few hundred listeners and downloads, up to a few thousand, this is a great way to track it over that time and to see those spikes. So I would look at that. I would look at direct traffic. You can also give out URLs. If you can give out a simple URL on the podcast, that's a good way to go as well, right? So to say something like, you get your free account at sparktoro.com/ whatever name of the podcast, right? And send people directly there. And then just also be aware, right, that podcast advertising is very much like brand advertising. So the way to measure it is similar to the way that you would measure a billboard, outdoor advertising, or a sponsorship of a conference, or how you would measure a TV ad or radio ad, right? You're essentially looking at brand lift over time. So just be aware that the one thing I think that's really a lot of podcast advertisers struggle with is, am I reaching the right audience? And that I think one of the best ways to do that is to listen to the actual podcast, listen to a couple of episodes, look at the comments, look at who's sharing it, look at, and potentially, right, use a tool like, depending on the brand it's associated with, use a tool like SimilarWeb or SparkToro, right, to be able to look at that.
Okay. Someone's asked, I know this might be a little bit off topic, but how do you build your flywheel from scratch?
Ooh, a flywheel question. What an excellent question. Okay, wait a minute. I got to show. I think, do I have it in here? I might. Yes. No, I don't have it in here. I have it in my SparkToro blog graphics. Oh, my screen sharing is paused. How do I need to unpause that? New share, that's the one. Boom. New share, this one. Okay, right. So resume slideshow. You can all see that. Nope, not that one. I want and view. Nope. Slideshow. That's the one. Oh God, why from beginning? All right. Here we go. So marketing flywheel, right? For those who aren't familiar with it, right? The idea is that you do a marketing thing, you boost that thing's reach, you engage and grow your audience, you use algorithms to get more from it, and you get higher ROI next time, right? So this is sort of the principle. It works well with ads, it works well with organic search, it works well with content marketing, it works well with PR. When you're starting from scratch, the marketing thing that you do and the boosting of the reach are the two most important, right? It's It's this one, do a marketing thing, right? Publish a blog post or create a new Google ad. And it's this thing, boost that thing's reach, share the post, boost the ad, amplify the podcast. Those are the two most important ones. And then these other elements, you will figure out over time. What I would urge you to do is when you choose that do a marketing thing, don't, there's a lot of people who are big fans of like the omni-channel marketing. I have to be everywhere. I've got to, whatever, Gary Vaynerchuk, like be here and here and here and here and here. I disagree with that, especially when you're starting early. Choose one thing, maybe two things that you like doing. You have to like doing it. If you are not personally passionate about it, you will not have success with it. I have never seen someone who's like, I hate Twitter, but I'm really good at sending tweets. No, like this is not, it doesn't happen. Maybe in politics world that happens, but in marketing world, no. Find one or two things you're really good at that you like doing where you can provide unique value. Unique value meaning differentiated from most of or all of the other competitors in the space. And then a place that actually reaches your customers. Those three things. I like doing it, I can provide unique value, and I'm actually reaching my customers here. That's the marketing thing I would urge you to choose first when you're building up that flywheel, and then find a way to boost that thing's reach by, that could be one-to-one outreach, sharing it to people who have influence in your sector. It could be earning retweets and amplification. It could be figuring out YouTube's algorithm and ranking for something there, right? Whatever it is, you're boosting your reach, and then you start to build this cycle. But that is how I would start that. And I have a blog post on this as well. So if folks go to the SparkToro blog, I think it's either the latest post or the second latest.
Okay, I think we'll take one more question. Just have a couple more come in. As you mentioned, starting a new business is exhausting. What made you want to start again when you've already built a very respected brand in Moz? That's a good question to end on.
Don't say revenge. Don't say revenge. Don't say revenge. Damn it. So no, let's see. Okay, first off, I think there is a common misperception that because Moz is whatever, a $50, $60 million a year revenue business, that this means that Rand himself is worth lots of money or has money. And this is not true. So I have about $400,000 in savings, which is much higher than most Americans, right? And I have a nice salary. It's fixed to the Seattle software engineer average, so $130,000 a year for SparkToro. So these, that's plenty of money, right? For me and Geraldine, we're doing okay, but I absolutely could not have retired, or, I could have gone and gotten another job. But no, I wanted to start a new business again because I wanted to solve this problem. I am actually excited about the problem SparkToro helps people solve around audience intelligence, and because I think I needed to prove to myself that I could do it again. Like you have this, I think as an entrepreneur and just for me, like I have this doubt, like am I good enough? Was Moz a fluke, or am I talented and can I build something again? And and that's proving it to myself and maybe proving it to a few people who didn't have a lot of faith in me previously. And so those are really the big driving factors. And I think there's also a little bit of, I wanted to build a business in this very unique way. For those who are in entrepreneurial world, we did this very unique funding. And by the way, Lisa is an investor. So thank you very much, Lisa. And SparkToro, I hope if it does well, a lot of other entrepreneurs will look at our funding model and say, oh, that makes way more sense than venture for my business. And then we can help, more entrepreneurs of more kinds build their companies. And that's something I'm very passionate about as well. So those three.
I think that is one of the most fascinating things about you and business is one, how honest you are and how willing you are to share everything. And I think those documents, and for anyone that hasn't seen those, like what Rand and Casey did for sharing the way that they got funding is kind of never really been done before on that kind of level. And it's kind of going against the traditional, the typical tech way of raising money, which so often gets you into a corner where you have no ability to make the decision you need to make to actually do the things that you thought you wanted to do in the end. And I just really admire you for doing that. And also I have sent so many people to that outsourced and it's very much like, any of you are thinking about starting your own business, then it is in tech. I personally don't believe you need it in the service kind of industry, but if you're starting in tech, it is a different kind of kettle of fish.
And we've had 3 other startups now use the open source docs that we shared, and a seed fund as well. So for anyone who is, if you are starting a tech business, tiny seed fund. Geraldine and I invested in it, full disclosure, but I really recommend it. They use SparkToro for all of their investments, and so slowly we could get this ball rolling. And I'm not just passionate about that. Like, I'm so passionate about what I see as like this big problem, right? Which we all feel in marketing, we all feel it, right? Google and Facebook, and to a certain extent, Amazon, like, dominate the advertising world, right? They use their monopoly power to, in a lot of cases, in my opinion, unfairly enter sector after sector, right? You can see the EU taking action against them. You can see the US considering it. And that concentration of power and concentration of wealth is really bad for income inequality. It's really bad for competition. It's really bad for, I think, the internet environment and ecosystem. Like, look at Zuckerberg's defense of leaving up, violent hatred content. It's awful. All this stuff that's just so bad. And I think that in a truly fair, sort of democratic capitalist world, we create opportunity for lots of businesses. That's what we want, right? We want lots of competition, lots of small and medium business, lots of people like you, like the people who are on this call, like us, right? Building companies. And to do that, we've got to have funding sources that don't bias to the 1 in 1,000 outcome, right? The venture model is invest in 1,000 companies, 4 or 5 of them become billion-dollar companies, everybody else fails. I don't want that, right? That's not the world I want to live in. So why would I raise money like that, right? Why would I sign up for those terrible odds? Oh my God.
Yeah, it totally blows my mind. I think I would love to do maybe a workshop another time for entrepreneurs that want to start up. I can do the agency side, and Mark, you're in. And Mark has been running his own business for ages as well. And Rand, this would be awesome to talk about all the different models and the way that you can do it. Because I know myself, I'm starting a business, and there were so many things that I just didn't know, and I still don't know. It's like one of those things you only come up on the answers when you come into the problem.
Exactly. Yep. This is exactly true.
And then you're just like, and they're like, well, it's really easy once you know it. It's like all the shortcuts in Excel.
No, this is so true. I in Lost and Founder, right? I likened it to playing a video game. Like the first playthrough, you're so bad at it, right? You're just falling in all the little holes and getting eaten by the monsters and whatever, right? And then your second playthrough, your third playthrough, you're like, oh, I'm kind of getting the hang of this. And I think starting a company just like that.
Do you think so I don't know about you, but for me, one of the things that have refined over time is that, and I think I would have thought it was different, but I feel like my principles and my values and stuff has become more and more important. And if anything, that's the thing that has become the most important to me. After selling my business and going through all of that, I think the thing I care about the most is the core of what I want to achieve, and the values and how people treat each other and all those things, which
I mean, this is, Lisa, that's at the core of why I'm so passionate and on the larger scale, right, about things like income inequality and universal basic income and these kinds of things. I care a lot about that. I think there's a ton of value in that because I see what happens when people get financial freedom, right? When they're no longer scared that like they'll be, you know, on the street and lose their homes. And it's crazy to think, it's so crazy to think to me that I worry about that for myself and like my family and Geraldine, right? Even though we have this money, I still am like, oh man, the US economy is so bifurcated that if you're not up here, you're down here, and healthcare, you know, you can't get that. And all these kinds of things are just brutal. And I really want to see a world where more people have financial independence so that we can see how people really behave, right? What their values are, and they can execute on that instead of being dragged into things they don't really want to do and support by money.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just me.
No, I totally agree. I think I think you're absolutely right. So interesting. I will literally could talk forever. I have got myself a glass of wine, and for anyone,
I just finished my coffee.
Oh, coffee. Yeah, it's a bit early for you to drink wine. Water, that does not count.
Got your water. There you go. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, Rand, for joining us. And I am pretty sure that everyone agrees that it's been a pleasure to have you.